paraphrase John Stuart Mill, for evil to prevail, good need not do anything. As we sit back and do nothing, darkness spreads. It's up to us, all of us, to make sure that that darkness, if not eradicated outright because of some quirk of human nature, then it at least is contained. But more importantly, that we shine a light upon it so it's not anonymous, so it's not hidden, so it's for all to see. 2 years ago, Ukraine endured a massive attack. And if you'll recall, we all saw on news feeds how this is unprecedented in European history for the last 50 years, and that Ukraine doesn't stand a chance. How they numerically, on paper, economically, militarily, simply are outgunned and outclassed. And Russia will sweep through, replace the Ukrainian government with their own puppet regime, and the world will simply accept it and march on. They went so far as to offer the democratically elected president of Ukraine an escape window, much as they did in other nations of the world when United States forces left. Keep in mind, no U.S. forces were in Ukraine protecting anyone. It was just the Ukrainians. And that's when the president of Ukraine famously said, I don't need a ride, I need a gun. And that's what characterized the Ukrainian-Russian war for the next 2 years. From the very beginning, it became obvious that this was not going to be a swift conflict. And indeed, America's reaction, the world's reaction, at first was very heartening. Have you ever seen so many Ukrainian flags? Has there ever been a greater moment of national awareness, of knowledge of Eastern European politics and geography than at that moment? Never. I grew up having to explain to folks what Ukraine was. And now I see people that proudly display maps that show Ukraine's position in the world. Ukraine stood up for itself. Its own soldiers are fighting for it. The United States, NATO, the world absolutely supports it and absolutely needs to support it with the resources they have. Here's the thing that no one seems to realize. If we pulled out of all our support, if Ukraine was left to its own devices, absolutely the Russian army would roll through it. And absolutely, for the remainder of my lifetime, there would be guerrilla warfare in the lands of Ukraine. Look at what happened at the end of World War II. Officially, World War II ends in 1945. But in the Western Ukrainian lands that were for the first time being subjugated by Moscow, the war continued for another 11 years. It was only in 1955 when the last vestments of the Ukrainian guerrilla, the Ukrainian insurgent army, were finally wiped out. This is absolutely the model that's going to happen if Ukraine does not receive the support it requires in order to safeguard its own borders. And it is a responsibility of many a nation that signed a Budapest Agreement in 1993 that guaranteed the borders of Ukraine. The United States, the United Kingdom, indeed Russia itself signed it. This is when Ukraine dissolved its nuclear armaments. In exchange for giving up those most powerful and maddeningly dangerous weapons, the borders of Ukraine, the autonomy and sovereignty of Ukraine were to be guaranteed by the greatest powers of the world. In 1993, the Budapest Agreement was signed. In 2014, Russia violated it. Russian troops, if you recall, the little green men, at first they denied it. They said it wasn't us, it was some indigenous, some kind of maverick outfit. It was absolutely the Russian regular military that took over and annexed Crimea in a legally rigged referendum afterwards. From 2014, Ukraine has been fighting this war. And it subsided. Its partners, the President of the United States, absolutely expressed sympathy and concern, chastised Putin, levied some form of sanctions, but no real support, nothing to return Crimea to Ukraine was perceived to be worth doing. And that's the policy of appeasement. And following that policy of appeasement, within 10 years of that, 8 years later, Russian forces crossed the border. Tanks and rockets started shelling the Ukrainian lands, and Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, was under direct attack. And it was only then that at first peacekeeping arms were being exchanged. I recall the president before Zelensky, Petro Poroshenko, standing in front of the Congress and thanking the American people for their support, but informing the American government that one cannot win a war with blankets. It just doesn't work. When Zelensky said, "I need a gun and not a ride," he was serious. And please recall, when he came to the United States and he addressed the United States Congress, he himself thanked not the government, but he thanked the American people, because he understands that that's how democracies work, that our politicians are indeed enactors of our collective wills. And right now, it is incumbent upon all of us, and it's really simple. As a democracy, we're pretty good in setting up mechanisms. If you go to congress.gov, then all you have to do is put in your state or your district, and your representative pops up on your screen with their email address. And you can absolutely send them an email. It doesn't have to be long, and it doesn't certainly have to be some great speech. You just tell them that you stand with Ukraine, that you support with the good, that Moscow's aggressions cannot be rewarded, they cannot be tolerated. Moscow crossed the line with this. They are behaving as a barbaric, uncivilized nation, and they must not be rewarded. To this day, with all these sanctions, Moscow is still making money off exports of crude oil to India that then proceeds to process it and pay them handsomely for it. This is not an embargo. We have not contained Moscow to the point that we should have, that we can do, economically, politically. No U.S. soldier should be asked to go fight for another nation. But the U.S. government has many tools by which it can wield its influence. And the United States is, after all, the one great superpower of the world. We are the leader of Western civilization. And it's up to us to act like it. For evil to prevail, all good has to do is nothing. We cannot afford to do nothing. So please, I encourage you all, congress.gov, write your representative, write your senator, make sure that they know that your voice needs to be heard. And it's very important that I am so proud to be a member of the Manor community. Since this horrible action started 2 years ago, Manor's been in the forefront of making sure that the message of Ukraine and the message of peace, love, and of hope is spread and known. If you go to Manor's website, manor.edu, under the About tab, you'll find the information page for the Ukrainian conflict. Manor promotes various different organizations that have direct contact in supporting not only the troops, but the civilian population, the church, the NGOs, the charitable associations, all throughout Ukraine and in the diaspora. Manor College has hosted several of our dialogues in which we talk directly about the concerns and issues facing both in Ukraine because of the war, but also throughout the world, and especially from the United States perspective. Why we have a vested interest in what's going on in Europe and indeed throughout. We cannot be so isolationist, so internally looking in the 21st century. It simply doesn't work anymore with the world economy. Manor College has been in the forefront of making sure that the message of Ukraine and its struggles are very much apparent to all. Foremost amongst them is the Ukrainian Heritage Museum here at Manor. Founded in 1977 as American bicentennial organization, our museum, under its wonderful curation, Christina Prokopovich, has continued nonstop outreaches to demonstrate Ukrainian culture, traditions, and indeed the identity of the Ukrainian people. It is most important that we do not forget who these Ukrainians are, because after all, that's precisely what Moscow is trying to do. They have declared a genocide. Putin has said point blank that he intends to wipe all the Ukrainians out, to destroy any vestige of the Ukrainian language, culture, and faith. Museums such as the Ukrainian Heritage Museum at Manor College are built uniquely to preserve this valuable treasure of intellectual wealth. Anything you could do to support it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Slava Ukraini!